What was the biggest betrayal of your life? I was walking through the park when I saw my dead dog playing fetch with a stranger. My heart stopped beating as I watched the golden retriever run after the tennis ball. Bailey had died 3 months ago while I was hospitalized. Or at least that's what my roommate Claire told me. I approached slowly, my brain refusing to process what my eyes were seeing. "Excuse me," I said to the woman. "Where did you get your dog?" She smiled brightly and said, "We adopted her 3 months ago from this woman on Facebook Marketplace." My knees nearly buckled as Bailey suddenly noticed me standing there. She went ballistic with recognition, launching herself at my legs while making desperate whimpering sounds that shattered something deep inside me. "Luna really likes you," the woman said, but her smile was fading as she watched Bailey desperately pawing at me. "Her name is Bailey," I said through tears streaming down my face. "She was my emotional support animal for 4 years, until my roommate told me she died." The woman immediately took a step back, pulling Bailey's leash tighter against her body protectively. "This is my daughter's dog now, and we've had her for 3 months, so I don't know what you're trying to pull here." I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, showing her hundreds of photos of Bailey and me together spanning years. My roommate told me she died while I was in the hospital, and even gave me an urn with ashes in it that I've been talking to every night. The woman looked at the photos but kept backing away while Bailey strained against the leash, trying to reach me. "Look, I'm sorry, but Luna is part of our family now, and my daughter would be devastated if something happened to her." She started walking away quickly, but Bailey was fighting her every step, making heartbreaking sounds that echoed through the park. "Please just tell me who sold her to you," I begged while following them. "I have years of vet records proving she's mine, and I need to know what happened here." The woman finally stopped, tears in her own eyes now. "My daughter has severe anxiety. Luna is the only thing helping her sleep since her father left us." Then she pulled out her phone, showing me the Facebook conversation from 3 months ago. There was Claire's profile picture smiling back at me from the screen. The listing included photos of Bailey taken just days before my accident, with a detailed description about needing to rehome her dog due to moving overseas immediately. I took screenshots of everything while my hands trembled with rage so intense I could barely stay standing. The woman had given me her number, promising to meet tomorrow to discuss everything, but watching Bailey disappear again felt like losing her twice. The walk back to my apartment was a blur of fury and memories. Claire had called me in the hospital, describing that Bailey had eaten something toxic, that the emergency vet couldn't save her, that she'd had her cremated so I wouldn't have to deal with it while recovering from surgery. When I reached my building, I could hear her music coming from inside, the bass shaking the door. The door swung open, and there was Claire on the couch wearing a limited edition Travis Scott Astroworld hoodie that cost $400. She looked up casually, but when she saw my face, her entire expression transformed into pure panic. "You told me Bailey died," I said, my voice so steady it scared even me. "You gave me ashes and let me grieve for 3 months while you sold her for concert tickets." Claire jumped up, knocking over her bong in the process, sending glass and water across the coffee table. "How did you find out about this?" she asked, which was basically a confession wrapped in a question. "Because I just saw her in the park with the family you sold her to," I said, stepping closer. "She recognized me immediately and tried to follow me home, but that little girl loves her now." Claire's face went through several expressions before landing on defiance, which shocked me completely. "You were probably going to die in that hospital anyway," she said with a casualness that made my blood freeze. "The doctor said you might not walk again, and I wasn't going to take care of a dog for a cripple." The word hung in the air between us. "I did you a favor by finding her a family that could actually take care of her properly." I stood there stunned by the cruelty coming from someone I'd lived with for 2 years. "You let me talk to those ashes every night," I whispered, my voice finally starting to break. "You held me while I sobbed about losing her, and you knew exactly where she was the entire time." Claire shrugged like we were discussing missing yogurt from the fridge instead of stealing my emotional lifeline. "The ashes were just kitty litter," she said, actually laughing at the confession. My stomach turned violently as I thought about the ceremonies I'd held, the tears I'd shed over cat litter in an urn. "I kissed that urn goodbye every morning," I said, feeling bile rise in my throat. "I brought it to therapy sessions to help me process the grief you invented." Claire rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic about something trivial. "What are you going to do about it now?" she asked, a smirk forming on her lips. My hand moved to my pocket before I even realized what I was doing, pulling out my phone and hitting record while Claire stood there with that awful smirk still on her face. She noticed the phone immediately and lunged forward, trying to grab it from my hand, but I stepped back and kept filming as she started yelling about privacy laws and how I couldn't record her without permission. "Say it again," I said, keeping the phone steady despite my shaking hands. "Tell me again what you did with Bailey while I was dying in the hospital." Claire's face went red as she realized she was trapped between lying on camera or admitting everything, and after a few seconds of silence, she started ranting about how I was being dramatic, how Bailey was just a dog, how she needed the money for concert tickets more than I needed some stupid animal. She actually said all of it again while trying to grab my phone, admitting she sold my emotional support dog for Travis Scott tickets, admitting the ashes were kitty litter, admitting she thought I was going to die anyway, so it didn't matter. I backed toward the door while she followed me, still ranting about how ungrateful I was after she let me live here, how she paid rent while I was in the hospital, how I owed her for taking care of everything. The recording captured every word as I opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Then I turned and walked straight to my car without looking back. Even as she screamed threats from the doorway about calling the cops on me for recording her, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the key in the ignition, and I sat there in the parking lot uploading the video to 3 different cloud services while watching the apartment door to make sure she wasn't coming after me. Once the uploads finished, I called my cousin who lived 2 hours away, explaining I needed somewhere to crash for a few nights because my roommate had done something unforgivable. He didn't ask questions, just told me to come over whenever I needed, and I drove straight to the cheapest motel I could find on Google Maps because I couldn't handle a 2-hour drive in my current state. The motel room smelled like cigarettes and cleaning products, but it had a bed and a door that locked, which was all I needed right now. I spent the entire night organizing everything on my laptop, creating folders for evidence, downloading every photo of Bailey from my phone, and social media, finding 4 years of vet records in my email, screenshotting the Facebook conversation the woman had shown me at the park. By 3 in the morning, I had a file with over 200 photos, 17 vet visit records showing Bailey's microchip number, and my name as owner, receipts for dog food and toys going back years, and now Claire's confession on video admitting she sold my dog and lied about her death. The next morning, my hands were steadier when I texted the woman from the park, explaining that I had legal documentation proving Bailey was stolen from me, suggesting we meet at a veterinary clinic where they could scan Bailey's microchip to verify ownership. I tried to sound reasonable and not desperate, mentioning I understood this was hard for her daughter, but that Bailey was illegally sold to them by someone who didn't own her. While waiting for her response, I searched for lawyers who handled property disputes, calling 5 different offices before finding one that dealt with pet custody cases. Most wanted consultation fees between $200 and $300 just to talk talk. Money I didn't have after paying for the motel. But finally I found a lawyer named Mustafa Rama who offered free initial consultations for cases involving fraud. His secretary scheduled me for the next afternoon, telling me to bring all documentation I had regarding ownership and the illegal sale. 20 minutes later, the woman texted back, agreeing to meet at a vet clinic, but warning me that her 8-year-old daughter would be devastated if she lost Luna, adding that the dog had been helping her daughter cope with severe anxiety after her father abandoned them 6 months ago. I felt sick reading about the little girl, but I texted back that I understood the situation was awful for everyone, that Bailey had been my emotional support animal for years, that we could figure out visitation or something, but I needed my dog back. The woman sent the address of a vet clinic near the park where we'd met, agreeing to meet there tomorrow at 2 o'clock. I spent the rest of the day preparing, printing everything at a FedEx office, organizing documents into a binder with tabs for different categories of evidence. I wonder why Claire kept those concert tickets so visible when she knew her roommate would eventually come home from the hospital. The timing feels strange too. Selling Bailey right when someone's hospitalized seems like it would raise questions from anyone buying the dog. The next morning, I drove back to the apartment complex and waited in my car until I saw Claire's car leave for work. Then I used my key to get inside and grab my clothes, my laptop charger, my grandfather's watch from my nightstand, and every important document I could find. I photographed everything in the apartment, including the urn on the mantle that I'd been treating like Bailey's remains for 3 months, opening it to show the clumped gray kitty litter inside. I grabbed the urn too, figuring it might be evidence of fraud or intentional infliction of emotional distress, or whatever legal terms applied to making someone grieve over cat waste. 2 days later, I sat in Mustafa's office while he reviewed everything, nodding as he flipped through the documentation, occasionally asking questions about dates and timelines. He explained this would be a civil matter called replevin, which meant asking the court to return wrongfully taken property to its rightful owner, and that my case was extremely strong given the microchip registration, vet records, and Claire's recorded confession. He agreed to take the case for a percentage of any damages we might win from Claire, explaining that we could sue her for fraud, conversion, and intentional infliction of emotional distress on top of getting Bailey back. After leaving the lawyer's office, I drove straight to the police station to file a report for theft by deception, sitting in a small room while Detective J. Park watched the video of Claire's confession. He took notes and said he'd investigate, but warned me that pet theft cases rarely resulted in criminal prosecution, that the district attorney usually considered them civil matters unless there was a pattern of behavior or significant monetary value involved. I gave him copies of everything anyway, figuring it couldn't hurt to have a police report on file, and he said he'd contact Claire for questioning within the next few days. That evening, my phone started buzzing nonstop with texts from Claire, starting with threats about suing me for illegally recording her, then switching to claims that I owed her 3 months of rent, then fake apologies saying she was sorry but I was overreacting, then back to threats about destroying my stuff if I didn't delete the video. I didn't respond to any of them, just screenshot each message and added them to my evidence folder, watching the text get increasingly unhinged as she realized I wasn't backing down. The next morning, I met the adoptive mother at the vet clinic downtown, my hands shaking as I walked through the automatic doors. Bailey started barking the second she saw me, pulling so hard against the leash that she was choking herself. The little girl holding the leash started crying immediately, wrapping her arms around Bailey's neck while looking at me like I was trying to steal her best friend. The vet tech called us back to an exam room where Bailey kept jumping at me, whimpering and pawing at my legs desperately. The adoptive mother held the leash tight while tears ran down her daughter's face, both of them watching Bailey try to climb into my lap. The vet came in with a microchip scanner, running it over Bailey's shoulder until it beeped with the chip number. She typed it into her computer and my name appeared on the screen along with my phone number and address from 4 years ago. The adoptive mother's face went completely white as she stared at the screen showing my ownership information clear as day. Bailey was going absolutely crazy now, pulling so hard she was gagging while making these desperate sounds I'd never heard from her before. The little girl started sobbing harder, begging her mom not to give Luna away, saying she couldn't sleep without her. The vet looked uncomfortable watching this whole mess unfold in her exam room, suggesting maybe we needed someone who handles these situations professionally. She handed us a business card for Ibrahim Royvel, saying he specialized in difficult pet custody cases when both parties had strong claims. The adoptive mother took the card with shaking hands, while her daughter buried her face in Bailey's fur, both of them crying now. I left the clinic feeling sick to my stomach, hearing Bailey's desperate barking all the way to my car. That night, my phone started blowing up with notifications from Facebook where Claire had posted some crazy story about me. She was calling me unstable and dangerous, saying I'd threatened her and that people should be careful around me. Friends I hadn't talked to in months were messaging me, asking what was going on, sending screenshots of her posts. I spent hours responding to everyone, explaining what really happened, sending them the recording of her confession. Some people believed me right away, but others said there must be more to the story if she was this upset. My stomach was in knots from the stress, and the surgical scar from my accident started throbbing with sharp pains. I called my therapist Zara Mendez for an emergency appointment, barely able to get the words out through my panic. She fit me in the next morning, helping me create a safety plan for dealing with Claire's harassment and the stress. We made lists of coping strategies, and she taught me breathing exercises to use when the anxiety got too bad. She also suggested documenting everything Claire was doing in case I needed a restraining order later on. That afternoon, the pain in my incision got so bad I couldn't stand up straight anymore. I drove myself to urgent care where they said the stress was causing inflammation around the healing tissue. The doctor told me I needed to rest more, or I could cause serious damage to my recovery. But I couldn't stop now when Bailey needed me to keep fighting for her. I called Mustafa Rama, the lawyer my cousin had recommended, and hired him that same day. He immediately drafted formal demand letters to both Claire and the adoptive family citing my proof of ownership. The letters included a deadline for Bailey's return, or we'd file a lawsuit for her return plus damages. He sent them certified mail so we'd have proof they received them, telling me to document any response. 2 days later, the adoptive mother called me sobbing, saying her daughter hadn't slept since the vet visit. She was begging me to consider some kind of shared custody arrangement, maybe weekends or something. She kept saying how much her daughter loved Luna and how the dog had helped with her anxiety after the divorce. I felt terrible for the little girl, but I couldn't imagine only seeing Bailey on weekends after everything. The mother offered to pay me for Bailey, saying she'd give me $5,000 to just let them keep her. I told her it wasn't about money, that Bailey was my emotional support animal, and I needed her back. She hung up on me after calling me heartless for breaking a child's heart over a dog. Meanwhile, Detective Park had started his investigation into the fraud and theft charges against Claire. He interviewed her at the police station where she spun this whole story about how sick I was after surgery. She claimed I couldn't take care of Bailey properly, and she was doing me a favor by finding her a good home. She told him she always planned to tell me eventually, but wanted to wait until I was stronger emotionally. The detective called me afterward, saying her story story had some holes, but he needed more evidence of criminal intent. I spent the next week gathering every piece of medical documentation I could find from my recovery. I got letters from my doctors confirming I was capable of caring for a pet during my recovery period. I pulled my emotional support animal prescription from 2 years ago, showing Bailey was medically necessary for my mental health. I found receipts for dog food I'd bought the week before my accident, proving I was actively caring for her. Every piece of evidence went into a folder I was building for both the criminal case and the civil lawsuit Mustafa was preparing. The next morning, I woke up to something sliding under my motel room door. It was a piece of paper with words cut from magazines saying I'd regret taking this to court. My hands shook as I picked it up and saw more threats about what would happen if I didn't drop everything. I drove to the hardware store and bought a cheap doorbell camera that connected to my phone. The installation took 20 minutes with the sticky backing on the door frame. That same night around 2 a.m., my phone buzzed with motion detected at my door. The video showed Claire clear as day sliding another note under, her face visible for 3 full seconds. I downloaded the footage immediately and emailed it to Detective Park with screenshots of her face. The note this time said she knew where I was staying and that accidents happen to people who don't mind their business. 2 days later, I met Ibrahim at a coffee shop downtown for our first mediation session. He was tall with gray hair and looked like someone's nice grandfather, which made this harder. We sat at a corner table while he pulled out a yellow legal pad and started writing. He said we both wanted what was best for everyone involved, especially the child and the dog. I told him Bailey was legally mine with 4 years of vet records and registration papers. He nodded and said his clients understood that, but had also bonded with the dog over 3 months. We agreed to keep talking and find a solution that wouldn't destroy anyone, though I made it clear Bailey belonged with me. After the meeting, I went through Claire's social media accounts more carefully, looking for anything useful. Her Instagram showed her at a concert 3 days after she sold Bailey, wearing a VIP lanyard and posting from backstage. The date on the post matched exactly with when the woman said she bought Bailey from Facebook. I found the ticket website and saw those VIP packages cost $800 each. She'd posted pictures of merchandise too, holding up signed posters and limited edition vinyl records. Bailey's pulling so hard she's choking herself while Claire's sliding threatening magazine cutouts under doors like she's cosplaying a bad movie villain. Someone needs to tell her this isn't how normal people handle getting caught selling their roommate's dog. The receipts from her shopping spree added up to almost $2,000 total. My bank account was down to $300 after paying Mustafa's retainer and the motel for another week. I sat in my car outside the bank, staring at the balance on my phone and feeling my chest get tight. That night, I created a crowdfunding page explaining everything that happened with screenshots of the evidence. Within 2 hours, strangers had donated $50, then $100, then more kept coming with messages of support. People shared their own stories about losing pets and sent whatever they could spare. By morning, I had enough for another month of expenses and legal fees. The adoptive mother texted me a video that made my stomach twist into knots. Her daughter was having a panic attack on the floor while Bailey pressed against her, licking her face until she calmed down. Another video showed them doing homework together with Bailey's head in the girl's lap. The mother wrote that Bailey had changed their lives and helped her daughter sleep through the night for the first time in years. I watched the videos over and over, seeing how gentle Bailey was with this scared little girl. Part of me understood why they fought so hard to keep her, even though she was mine first. 3 days later, the storage facility called saying someone tried to break in using bolt cutters on my unit. The security guard had scared them off, but they got everything on camera. I drove there immediately and watched the footage with the manager in his office. Claire was wearing a baseball cap, but her face was visible when she looked up at the camera. She'd gotten through one lock before the guard showed his flashlight, and she ran. I called Detective Park from the parking lot and forwarded him the new footage. He said this was the 3rd incident now and strengthened the harassment case significantly. We worked out a schedule for supervised visits where I could see Bailey while the adoptive family stayed nearby. The first visit was at a dog park on a Saturday morning. When Bailey saw me getting out of my car, she started pulling so hard the woman almost fell over. Bailey jumped on me, crying and shaking while I held her and tried not to sob in front of everyone. The little girl stood there watching with tears running down her face. Her mom held her hand and whispered something about sharing. Bailey wouldn't leave my side for the entire hour, following me everywhere and panicking when I moved too far away. When it was time to leave, Bailey tried to follow me to my car and had to be physically pulled back. The sound she made as they drove away tore something inside me that felt permanent. Mustafa called that afternoon saying negotiations had completely stalled and we needed to file the lawsuit immediately. The legal term was replevin, which meant asking the court to return stolen property to its rightful owner. He filed everything electronically that day and got a court date 5 weeks out. 5 weeks felt like 5 years when every night without Bailey hurt this much. I couldn't stay in the motel forever, so I found a small studio apartment that allowed pets. The landlord needed first month, last month, and security deposit, which wiped out most of the crowdfunding money. I signed the lease anyway and moved my few belongings from the motel. The apartment was empty except for a mattress on the floor and boxes in the corner. Every night I'd look at the corner where Bailey's bed should be and feel the silence pressing down. I bought a dog bed anyway and put it there, preparing for when she came home. Claire must have been watching my social media because suddenly my medical records from the hospital appeared on a revenge website. My full name, address, diagnosis, medications, even notes about my mental health were posted for anyone to see. Screenshots spread to other sites within hours. Mustafa sent a cease and desist letter that same day threatening criminal charges and a civil lawsuit for invasion of privacy. The 3rd supervised visit happened 2 weeks later at the same park where I'd first found Bailey. She came running toward me like always, but this time something was different. Her ribs were showing through her fur and she kept looking back at the adoptive mother every few seconds. When I threw the tennis ball, she'd fetch it but wouldn't bring it all the way back. She'd drop it halfway and just stand there panting. The woman noticed it too and mentioned Bailey hadn't been eating much lately. She'd also started chewing on furniture, which she'd never done before. After 20 minutes, Bailey just laid down on the grass between us looking confused. The adoptive mother pulled me aside while her daughter played with Bailey. She offered me $5,000 to just walk away and let them keep her. She said it would help with my medical bills and everyone could move on. I told her Bailey wasn't just a pet to me. She was trained to detect my seizures before they happened and had saved my life more than once. The money meant nothing compared to getting her back. She looked defeated but said she understood. Detective Park called me 3 days later with news about Claire's case. He'd gathered enough evidence to send everything to the district attorney's office. Bank records showed Claire depositing the exact amount from the Bailey sale the same day she bought those concert tickets. He'd also found text messages where she bragged to friends about the whole thing, but he warned me criminal charges could take months to actually happen. The courts were backed up and this wasn't considered a violent crime. I started posting about my situation in online support groups for pet theft victims. Dozens of people reached out with similar stories. Some had gotten their pets back through legal action, while others never saw them again. They gave me advice about documenting everything, investigating and staying persistent with the authorities. One woman said her cat was sold 3 states away, and it took her a year to get him back. The support helped me feel less alone in this nightmare. Then Claire's friends started contacting me out of nowhere. Her college roommate messaged me on Facebook saying she had no idea what Claire had done. She remembered Claire bragging about going to that Travis Scott concert, but thought she'd saved up for it. Another friend called to say Claire had been telling people I abandoned Bailey at the hospital. They all seemed genuinely shocked when I showed them the evidence. 3 of them offered to write statements about what Claire had told them. The legal battle got more complicated when the adoptive family hired their own lawyer. Mustafa met with me to explain their argument. They were claiming that 3 months of care and possession gave them legal ownership. They paid for food, vet visits, and toys during that time. Mustafa countered with my years of documentation showing Bailey was my registered emotional support animal. He also emphasized that the sale was fraudulent since Claire never had the right to sell her. The lawyer meetings started piling up, and I had to make hard choices. My physical therapy was scheduled 3 times a week, but the legal meetings kept conflicting. I'd already missed 4 therapy sessions, and my leg was getting weaker. The doctor warned me that skipping therapy could set my recovery back months, but I couldn't risk losing Bailey by missing important legal meetings. My leg could wait, but this custody battle couldn't. We tried mediation next, which seemed promising at first. The mediator suggested a transition plan where Bailey would spend increasing time with me over several weeks. The adoptive mother actually seemed open to it, but then her daughter found out and had a complete meltdown in the mediator's office. She screamed that we were stealing her dog and ran out of the room crying. The mother followed her, and that was the end of that session. Things got worse when I came home one day to find Claire's stuff gone from the apartment. The building manager was standing in the hallway looking frustrated. He told me Claire had left in the middle of the night owing 3 months of back rent. She'd taken everything she could carry and left the rest trashed. He asked if I knew where she went, but I had no idea. Her phone was disconnected and her social media accounts were deleted. She'd completely vanished without any forwarding address. The manager said he'd have to eat the lost rent since finding her would cost more than she owed. Then everything changed when a local news station found my crowdfunding page. A reporter called asking if they could do a story about Bailey and the legal battle. I wasn't comfortable being on TV, but Mustafa said the publicity might help. The story aired that Thursday night with my face blurred out for privacy. Within hours, donations started pouring in from strangers who'd seen the segment. People were sending $20, $50, even $100 donations with messages of support. But it also meant everyone in town now knew about my situation. I started getting recognized at the grocery store, and strangers would stop me to share their own pet stories. The adoptive mother called me 3 days later, asking if we could meet at the park where I first saw Bailey. She was sitting on the same bench when I arrived, watching her daughter throw a tennis ball for Bailey in the distance. Her hands were shaking as she pulled out her phone and showed me the Facebook messages from Claire again. She pointed to specific parts where Claire had rushed the sale, offered a discount for quick pickup, and refused to provide vet records. The woman admitted she knew something felt wrong, but her daughter had been having panic attacks every night since the divorce, and Bailey was the first thing that helped. She showed me videos of her daughter sleeping peacefully with Bailey curled up beside her. The guilt hit me like a punch to the stomach watching this kid who clearly loved my dog. Here's Bailey doing therapy work for free while everyone's fighting over her. She's basically running an unlicensed emotional support business at this point with multiple clients who all need her help desperately. We decided to try one overnight where Bailey would stay with me to see how she handled it. When I picked her up that evening, the little girl was sobbing so hard she threw up on the sidewalk. Bailey kept looking back at her and whining as I led her to my car. That night was horrible as Bailey scratched at my apartment door until her paws bled. She paced the apartment whimpering and wouldn't eat or drink anything I offered her. Around 3 in the morning, she finally collapsed from exhaustion, but woke up an hour later and started the whole process again. I sat on the floor crying as I watched my dog suffer from being separated from the child she'd bonded with. The next morning, I had to carry Bailey back to their house because she was too exhausted to walk. My therapy appointment with Zara was that afternoon, and I spent the whole session sobbing about the impossible situation. She reminded me that Claire had stolen Bailey from me while I was fighting for my life in the hospital. She pointed out that I'd grieved for months over fake ashes while my dog was alive just miles away. Zara helped me see that returning stolen property to its rightful owner wasn't cruel, even if innocent people got hurt in the process. 2 days before our court hearing, I got a frantic call from the adoptive mother. Her daughter had been admitted to the psychiatric ward after a severe anxiety attack at the school. The kid had scratched her arms raw and wouldn't stop screaming about losing Bailey. The mother begged me to postpone the hearing, and my lawyer Mustafa agreed it would look bad to proceed while the child was hospitalized. The judge granted a 3-week delay, which meant more waiting and uncertainty. During this time, I was scrolling through social media when Claire's face popped up on my feed. She was posting from music festivals in Colorado, showing off VIP passes and expensive merchandise. I sent the screenshots to Detective Park, who said extradition for a misdemeanor theft case was basically impossible. Claire had gotten away with everything while I was stuck in this mess she created. Mustafa and I spent hours organizing my evidence for the new hearing date. I had 4 years of vet bills totaling thousands of dollars, Bailey's adoption papers from the shelter with my signature, training certificates from obedience classes we'd taken together, and hundreds of photos documenting our life. The stack of papers was 3 inches thick, but I still worried the judge might side with the family because of the child's mental health. The morning of the hearing, my hands were shaking, so bad I could barely button my shirt. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, with wood paneling that made everything feel dark and serious. The adoptive family sat across from us with their lawyer while Bailey waited in a courthouse holding room. The judge reviewed all my evidence slowly, asking questions about specific vet visits and training milestones. He looked at photos of Bailey as a puppy in my arms and recent ones of her with the adoptive family. After an hour of testimony, he said he had no doubt I was the legal owner, but he was concerned about the child's well-being. He ordered Bailey returned to me, but with a 2-week transition period where the family could visit her at my apartment. He also required me to reimburse them for their vet expenses from the past 3 months. After court, the adoptive mother asked if we could get coffee to discuss the transition plan. We sat in a small cafe, both crying as we tried to figure out a schedule that would work. She showed me receipts for $800 in vet bills and food costs from the 3 months they'd had Bailey. I wrote her a check that completely emptied my savings account, but it felt like the right thing to do. She said her daughter was released from the hospital tomorrow and asked if they could visit Bailey this weekend. I agreed, even though the thought of supervised visits in my own home made me uncomfortable. Bailey's first night back home was absolute chaos from the moment we walked through the door. She immediately peed on my couch, then knocked over a lamp trying to get to the window. She destroyed 2 pillows and chewed through my phone charger while I was in the bathroom. When I tried to put her in her old bed, she howled like she was murdered. I ended up sleeping on the floor next to her while she whimpered through the night. The next morning, I called a dog behaviorist who said Bailey was showing signs of severe trauma from the multiple separations. The behaviorist charged $300 just for the consultation and another $1,000 for the the 6-week training program. She handed me a thick packet of exercises and schedules that looked more complicated than my college coursework. Bailey needed structured routines, specific commands, and constant positive reinforcement to overcome her separation anxiety. I spent the next week following the plan religiously, setting timers for every activity, and rewarding Bailey with treats when she stayed calm. She started improving slowly, staying in her bed for 5 minutes without whimpering, then 10, then 20. My phone buzzed one morning with a text from the adoptive mother asking if her daughter could say goodbye to Bailey properly. My stomach twisted, but I knew the kid deserved closure after losing what she thought was her dog. We agreed to meet at the same park where I'd first found them. The little girl ran toward us the moment we arrived, tears already streaming down her face. Bailey wagged her tail but stayed pressed against my leg, confused by the emotional reunion. The girl hugged Bailey for almost 10 minutes while her mother stood nearby taking photos. I promised to send them occasional updates even though my lawyer said I didn't have to maintain any contact. The girl whispered something in Bailey's ear before her mother finally pulled her away. They walked to their car without looking back while Bailey watched them leave, then turned to me for reassurance. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of training sessions and slow progress. Bailey started responding to her old commands again, sitting and staying without the panic in her eyes. She began sleeping on my bed instead of pacing the apartment all night. Her appetite returned and she stopped destroying things when I left the room for a few minutes. The district attorney's office called to inform me they wouldn't be pursuing criminal charges against Claire. They classified it as a civil matter despite the fraud and emotional distress involved. I wasn't surprised since these cases rarely result in prosecution, but the disappointment still stung. Claire would face no real consequences beyond the cease and desist order my lawyer had sent. I found a support group online for people who'd experienced roommate fraud and abuse. The first meeting was awkward, but hearing other people's stories helped me realize how common these betrayals were. One woman's roommate had sold her grandmother's jewelry while she was at the funeral. Another person's roommate had been cashing their disability checks for months. We shared warning signs we'd missed and red flags we'd ignored. 6 months passed before Bailey and I found our rhythm again completely. She still had panic attacks during thunderstorms, or when delivery trucks rumbled past our building. The adoptive family sent a holiday card with a photo of their daughter hugging a new golden retriever puppy. They'd named him Lucky and thanked me for being understanding about the whole situation. I kept the card on my fridge next to all the photos of Bailey from before everything happened. Claire moved to another state according to mutual friends who still followed her on social media. She posted constantly about her new life and fresh start without any mention of what she'd done. The cease and desist order was the only consequence she ever faced for selling my dog and lying about her death. Part of me wanted justice, wanted her to suffer the way I had suffered, but Bailey was home now, curled up on my feet while I worked from home. She followed me everywhere, never letting me out of her sight for more than a few seconds. The vet said her anxiety might never fully go away after everything she'd been through. I spent thousands on training and therapy for both of us. My therapist helped me process the betrayal, while Bailey's behaviorist helped her trust again. Some nights I still woke up in a panic, reaching for Bailey to make sure she was really there. She always was, pressing her warm body against mine and licking my hand until my heart rate slowed. The adoptive family invited us to their daughter's birthday party, but I declined politely. Seeing Bailey confused and torn between two families would hurt everyone involved. Instead, I sent a gift card and a photo of Bailey playing in the snow. The mother texted back that her daughter had the photo framed in her room. Sometimes I wondered what would have happened if I hadn't walked through that park that day. Would I have spent the rest of my life talking to cat litter in an urn? The thought made me sick, but also grateful for the coincidence that brought Bailey back. Claire never apologized or acknowledged what she'd done. Mutual friends said she told people I was crazy and had abandoned Bailey. She painted herself as the hero who found the dog a better home. I stopped caring what she said or what people believed. Bailey was home, we were healing together, and that had to be enough. The anger still flared up sometimes when I saw expensive concert tickets or designer clothes online, but then Bailey would nudge my hand for pets, and the rage would fade into something manageable. We had each other again, and that was what mattered most. Thanks for letting me wonder and question things with you today. It's been really interesting sharing this time together. Until we meet again, like the video, it helps more than you think.